So right now I'm making my way, well, I'm about to leave my house. I'm making my way to Thomas Edison's house. They just opened it. I never been to the museum either, but I'm gonna see if they let me take some video. Definitely want to capture this. Have a thing for Victorian stuff, and his house is definitely very Victorian. Alright, so here we are. Here we go. Let this adventure start. Peace out. So that was really interesting. I went to the museum. It was mainly, it's almost like all the factors, actually that's what it was. It was all the factors put together, and I never realized how much work he used to put into everything. There was, for example, we know him for the light bulb, but he had, in order for him to get the light bulb, he had to do all these experiments in order for him to find the right filament, the right material to go and filament in the light bulb. And then he had to develop the cable, he had to develop the generators to power this cable to pass the electricity through this whole thing. He had to invent a lot of things. Unfortunately, after we finished the tour of the whole museum, and then we're going to the house, we were not allowed photography in the house. They're recently renovating the house. It's really, really nice. The reception is like magnificent. The cloth in in the drapery, in the furniture, everything's very weathered. It's falling apart, and I can see why they would say no flash photography, because they didn't use artificial dyes like we do now, so they weren't resistant to very like sunlight and stuff like that. So when you go into the house, it is a really big house, but you could see like the cracks on the windows, on the wall, on the ceiling. There's a lot of renovation that needs to be done. So I could see why they would say no photography. They want to preserve everything as much as they can. Fortunately for us, but then you go outside, you could see like the actual like property, how big it is. I found out that right next to him, the neighbor, he's the Colgate from the toothpaste, the guy in Colgate, Whoopi Goldberg, apparently lives around the same area. And I don't know, it seems interesting. Like the garage is bigger than my whole house, but you see the Rolls Royce, you learn about his kits and everything. It's interesting to have seen. I wish I could have taken a picture, but I wasn't allowed. Where he came up in the very desk that he came up with all those ideas in his house. He set me back in those times, and in a way, and maybe because I live in the northeast, it doesn't seem so far off. I see, for example, the factories around this town. It resembles his laboratory. The most advanced laboratory he had for chemistry was a very rudimentary laboratory in today's days, but back in the day, that was the hype. And you know, I feel, I don't know, lucky to be able to see all these things that most people don't get to see. I mean, I'm very lucky to live in ironically, it's a very nicely renovated Victorian house, even though everything, let's say from here, the innards of this house is like Home Depot, but it used to be a Victorian house. Around the places where I live, you could see it's all like Victorian style, because he was from that era, and people still live in those places, and it seems the norm for the people here. But for people like, let's say, in the West or in other countries, you don't get to see this kind of thing, all these modern renovations, new houses, developments. It's not the same. And here there's still that nostalgia about all this structure, but people don't get to really see it. Going back over there to the museum, you get to see how well he treated his workers, how positively driven forward this guy was. He was very optimistic, and as he said, there was no, if something went wrong, he never reprimanded you for going wrong, but he would give you advice to make it better. And this is, I feel like this is the kind of forward thinking that we need on today, because this guy right here, Thomas Edison, let me flip, definitely had the right idea. His light bulb went right up. But I don't know, like, it seemed very inspiring to go and see a brilliant mind at work. Even though he's no longer there, his legacy precedes him. His work, his passion is very much, you can feel it. You go in his house, you could feel it. You go in the laboratory where he used to spend most of the time. He used to work like 90 hours, 95 hours a week just in his own business, and you could feel the passion, the love that he had for everything he invented, everything he knew. I just feel I hope I could get a little glimpse of that in my own life, in order for us, or for me mainly, in order for me to continue in doing the things that I do. And I'm kind of glad that you guys went with me on this little trip, just to give you a little glimpse and the opportunity for some of you that cannot make it here. I'm very lucky to have seen the beginning, and not necessarily the end, but the beginning of it all, in the Industrial Revolution, and living in the heart of one of the most industrialized nations in the world. And then you get to see something as simple as this light, that light being so, we take it for granted, but it took a huge amount of effort in order for us to get where we are now, to just simply switch on a light and then just be, oh well, yeah, this is electricity, but we don't even think about it. And somebody like Thomas Edison, who had to not only think about it, but think about how are we going to distribute it, how are we going to invent it, how are we going to promote it, market it, sell it, and make it something that we are all now rejoicing into, something so complex, yet for us now so simple. I hope you enjoyed the field trip, and thanks for coming with me. I hope you took something out of this whole thing, maybe my little rant over here, but let's keep on moving forward and be optimistic about life. Peace out. Fire Child out.